I have, to speak to these points of the power of men being able to even just reiterate and to share, and how that can have an impact. I mean, you look at the contemporary examples. Right now, for example, we're talking about Bill Cosby and his history because a man said something that a dozen women have been saying literally for decades. And now a man has said it and we're talking about it. And I mean, that's a broad example and a terrible example, certainly. But like for my part as well, and you can, if you're on Twitter, you can try this. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of sad, but it's illuminating. You can actually, there have been so many times, like Natalie and I have had conversations that have gone like this. And when you're a guy, when you're in that position, you can sort of do it for sport, but you can learn a lot doing it. I have come into these conversations where someone like Natalie, for example, has made a point and suffered backlash. People are saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, and you know, fake gamer girls and blah, blah, blah.
They're rarely that polite, but thank you.
Well,
dear Natalie.
I didn't
I've taken umbrage with the tweet that you made earlier.
I feel as though you may be a fake gamer girl.
Yeah. Please review the following appendices.
What an articulate troll. But no, you can actually, in these situations, and it's fun, try it sometime, you can actually get in there and say, well, to be fair, and then make the exact same point as a guy. And it's amazing the number of times people have gone like, oh, well, yeah, maybe, you know, for sure. And you
I like your troll voice.
Yeah.
It's good.
Oh, okay. You know. Like, for added points, do it word for word and see what happens. Like, just copy and paste, and you get a better reaction. And it's, like I say, it's hilarious, but it's depressing.
This is so depressing.
Yes. And I think one of the things that something like this, it's very innocuous. Like, I can almost guarantee none of you will get a threat. None of you will actually even be spoken to rudely. And it's that turning point. So all of us are looking for, you know, that one moment where we have that, aha, this is really a problem. Do something like this. Because if you're having trouble believing that it's not provoked by something particular that just women do, because, you know, when we're not working, we're actually conspiring. This is what we do. Between like 5 and 7 p.m., there's like a secret conference call. Do this, because I think this will illustrate to you that it's very benign. It's not directed at particular women, even though it sounds like it is. And it's not just a few, you know, half a dozen guys somewhere. This is a lot of people. And I think the reason why there's a lot of people is there's this bizarre sense of brotherhood in doing the same thing that some other dude's doing, even though you may, if you think critically about it, you would not engage in something like this. And this is the cult of manhood. Just stop, guys, like seriously, because this is not helping anyone. If the big question here is that you feel as though you didn't belong in other spaces and you created a space in tech and there are other people invading it, you're kind of doing the same thing to women and other people who want to be in that space, not because they want to take something from you, but because they just want to exist. And we need to be able to talk about that and see, and that illustration would be a perfect example. And it is very sad how consistently that will work.
There's also, I want to speak a little bit to the perception that the reason that women in tech talk about being a woman in tech or have to, you know, constantly have these conversations over and over again, or to, you know, engage in feminist critiques, is not necessarily because like that's what I like doing, like that's my hobby. Like I think it's super fun to talk about how everything is shitty all the time. Like if everybody would just leave me alone so I could like write,
Do your work.
do my work. If I could write my PhD about dancing in World of Warcraft, I would do that. That would be delicious. If I could write my PhD dissertation on the way that horror and fear and terror are managed in Minecraft communities, that sounds like super fun and way more way less likely to get me car bombed, quite frankly. I think that sounds lovely. But I can't, because it's a question of survival. It's a question of there is no space for me or my colleagues here, and the space that is there is shrinking dramatically, or it's not safe for us to be here. If I could stop talking, I'm bored and tired, quite frankly. I'm super bored and tired of talking about this. I'm sure as heck not doing it for attention. I'm sure not doing it because I think it's a fun thing to do. I'm doing it because I don't think there's a choice. And I think that any woman who's constantly talking about their position as a woman in tech, it's like I'd really like to have to stop saying I exist. By the way, over and over again.
You know, it's complex, right? We tell stories about being on the internet because the internet is the world within which we now live. We tell stories about being women on the internet because we are women, and if we're going to tell a personal story, it's our story. The trouble is, the internet is a different place for women, and when you start telling that story, there's a lot of really the reason that we are women on the internet is because, and exploring it in different ways or working on it in different ways is because we like it, we love it, we're drawn to the power, the possibility, the potential, the learning, the intellectual exploration, the human connection. At the same time, what goes with that is this baggage that being a woman on the internet has these other components, has these hoops that you have to go through, has this level of kind of constant alert. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. Because the first step is, this is the world that we're in, and it's exciting, and it's phenomenal, and we want to be doing this work, and we can make change, and we can make new things. We want to do this work. We want to explore a frontier. We are women, and this is our experience, and so those are the stories we will tell. I think that they're really important stories, and I think, some of them might be bored. I think that the work you're doing is really, really still important. And any female experience is an important one. I think that's another piece of this story is we need more female stories being told. All of them, every perspective. We're still a minority. It's still hard for a woman director, for a woman writer, for a woman main character having that story told. And so from all of these perspectives, we just need more of those voices, even when they're very, very unpleasant. But that needs to be part of the bigger picture that people are exposed to also.
And I think one of the things that we maybe don't consider is the tax that we pay for being different in these spaces. And by that I mean 99% of the meetings that I walk into in the work that I do is mostly male. So I'm the only woman in these meetings. And I walk in, and for the first 5 minutes, in one way or another, I'm just reassuring the dudes, we're gonna be fine. We're really gonna be okay. I know that I look different, but really, we're here to talk about work. And we laugh now, but imagine those 5 minutes, every single meeting that I go to, there is a tax on my productivity that I'm paying for no other reason than you're not used to seeing somebody like me in the room. And that, if you add it all together, that's hours and hours of good work that we can produce if we are just, allowed to do what we love doing. Tech is an amazing space. So much is happening. In 15 years, there will be no other sector that is not touched by tech. The lines are blurring. So if you are a part of the audience or engaging with somebody who is, in tech and then thinking, well, that's really bad, and, but that's not what I do. That's not my space, and therefore I don't need to be engaged in speaking up. You're wrong, because this is the world that we live in now, and that's really, really important for us to grasp.
I feel like those 5 minutes are, we touched on it before, is that in some way it's prove it again. It's just, prove that we can have this meeting without it being about who you are, what you have on, what you look like, what your facial features are.
Like, what are you so scared of? That we're gonna make video games about periods? Like, I'm really confused. Oh no.
I had something. I wonder if we could speak to, for example, we've talked about a lot of the more obvious and offensive challenges that we've noticed that you have to face, and the more obvious manifestations of this gap. But I wonder if we could speak to, for example, some of the more subtle and insidious things that you guys know how to spot because it's part of your day-to-day, but which men might not as readily put together. And a big example from this past month is Matt Taylor, who landed a rocket on a comet, but was also the inspiration for me wearing the blandest shirt I could pull out of my closet. Because you had a situation where he, for those of you who don't know, he went on television, did a press conference in this very gaudy, offensive, like, shirt covered in scantily clad women, which sends a real message, of course, to women in tech, basically saying, we did this amazing thing, and if you want to grow up to do that one day, these are the hurdles that you're going to face just trying to make that happen. And to his credit, he realized he'd made a mistake, and he, quote-unquote, manned up, he apologized. But even after that, you had a lot of guys, and not stupid guys, not, you know, woman-hating guys, people going like, this poor dude, it's just a shirt. He landed a rocket on a comet, and we're all talking about the shirt. And for a lot of guys, I think that was like, you can ask questions like, what's the big deal about a shirt rhetorically, or you can ask them in the hope that somebody will answer. So I wonder if we could speak to how to enable that.
So, first of all, nobody in the world was more excited than me when that rocket landed on that goddamn comet. Like it was hilarious. Like I was so preface what I am about to say with the fact that like there was literally like jumping and a dance and hand waving. Okay, it was very embarrassing. So who let him wear that shirt on television? Who did that? Where were his friends? Where were his coworkers? Where was like the person holding the camera? Did they all hate him? Like, was everybody like, oh man, did you see what Matt's wearing? Let's see how this plays out. Popcorn, like, you're all terrible people. Every person in his life who let him wear that shirt, you should be ashamed of yourself. You were mean. Because a lot of the arguments that I heard was like, you know, he's like this geeky tech guy. He didn't know, like, he just made a really bad wardrobe choice, and we're just like tarring and are there no other humans who saw him that day before he stepped in front of the camera? Like, was he teleported onto television? No. Every person who saw him made the decision that, like, this is fine, that we're going to let him wear a shirt with naked ladies on it to talk about the fact that he landed a rocket on a comet. They're all mean, and I think they should all feel very bad about what they did.
But
Number one. Number two, it's not that wearing that shirt is the worst thing in the history of time. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. What I got from so many of the responses and what I felt about it myself is like, it's just sheer exhaustion. It's like, of course, the thing that I am so excited about, that just like made my goddamn week, that made me do a little dance, of course, the brilliant man who I deeply admire, who's talking about it, has a boob shirt on, is wearing the worst shirt, is saying in a tiny, probably unintentional, probably totally awkward and fumbling way, you don't belong here. You're a joke. You're funny. It's funny that you exist. And that this space is such, that I work in is such that everyone around me will let this happen, and we will all think this is a funny joke, and we can't possibly conceptualize the fact that this would make anyone uncomfortable. We can imagine a universe in which a rocket can land on a comet, but we can't project far enough to see that maybe the naked lady shirt on television is a problem and might make somebody feel that that's not a space that they belong in. So it's a small thing, The point is not that it's a big thing. The point is that it's a small thing. And I think so many people, me included, were upset because that is one of 10,000 small things today.
It's death by a million paper cuts.
I think that there's something ironic about it too, though, which is that like lack of thought that goes into what you're wearing is totally kind of highlights the amount of thought that I think women have to put into what they're wearing. Of like, I won't wear something that's low cut, and I won't, like I'll button up and I'll wear glasses, and it's something that I overcame. But there was a period of my life where I was working on big installations with big tech companies and lighting companies and doing a lot of the kind of heavy creative lifting, but would go into those meetings and was young and didn't necessarily have the same confidence that I have now, didn't have the degree that I have now, didn't have, the title that I have, didn't have sort of the female role models that I got to come across when I was working at PBS, let's say, female directors, didn't have all of these things that have given me confidence as I've leveled up, as I've proven myself over and over and over, but would make those conscious decisions of how I would downplay everything feminine, everything that, how to maybe make the 5 minutes 3 minutes. And so I think that there is something that is said about someone not thinking about what they're wearing when we have to, just to kind of level the playing field.
I think that speaks to the whole boys will be boys, right? Nobody says, oh, girls will be girls. There's no existence of that. There's no permission to just be. And I think to say that it's not a big deal, it's just a shirt, is to say what you're feeling is invalid. What you're being made uncomfortable with is your problem. So the person who made the decision to wear the shirt, the people who didn't call it out, all of those people, nobody's calling conspiracy there. But by golly, those 15 women who are going after Cosby are all conspiring. Also Jian Ghomeshi, they're all conspiring. So
It's the meeting that we have.
right.
5 and 7.
That I wasn't supposed to mention, right. And it gets exhausting to the point where it's difficult, I recognize. It's difficult on the receiving end and say, oh, those feminists, now here's another problem. It's just a shirt. But you have to realize that these big things and small things all together are huge for us on a day-to-day level. And it would be lovely if we can get to a point where we stop talking about this and we talk about how we can make this better. We would all love that conversation, where we didn't have to prove that it's a problem, where we all agreed that it is, and we were asked, so how do we fix this? That is the conversation that I'm waiting for in public spaces. And it's happening, slowly, but it's happening.
Well, that's an excellent question. So how do, in the very general sense, how do we fix this? If you have young men, metabologists who are on board, who are ready to do what it takes to help make that happen, in a situation like that, like how do we, what's our point of entry, I suppose?